Lydia Moynihan once again shows why so many people criticize her political commentary. In this discussion, the panel focuses on the Trump administration's decision to move the names of 4 service members killed during the Iran conflict into a different category. Rather than addressing that issue directly, Lydia repeatedly shifts the conversation toward unrelated topics. Phillip refuses to let the discussion get sidetracked, challenges those distractions, and brings everyone back to the main issue. Watch the full exchange first, and afterward, I'll share my thoughts on what happened.
Tonight, as Donald Trump and his aides assess their remaining military options in Iran, the Pentagon is facing scrutiny over a depleted munitions stockpile and a lack of transparency over the human cost of this conflict. After nearly 2 weeks of U.S. strikes in Iran, Donald Trump announced a temporary pause today. He says at the request of the Iranian regime to allow for negotiations. Iran says no such talks are happening. And despite the pause, Saudi Arabia says it intercepted several drones launched from Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. Now, over the weekend, the Pentagon quietly updated its war casualty database, recording more than 140 additional wounded and restoring the 4 soldiers killed due to the Iranian strikes after they effectively disappeared from the website. Now, after facing scrutiny over why the number of killed and wounded somehow dropped as the Iranian attacks escalated, officials blamed a data disruption. They denied that there was any intentional effort to mask the war's toll. But instead of listing the casualties under Operation Epic Fury, the database now features a new tracking category for killed and wounded troops starting on July 7th. That's a date that coincides with when Trump claimed a new conflict with Iran began in a war powers notification that was sent to Congress. I think this is important for several reasons. I think there's some practical issues here for the troops who are affected, especially the ones who are wounded. But the idea that that they can recategorize these deaths and casualties under a different conflict, even though we all know that this is part of the same conflict, that seems to be an attempt to obscure what is happening.
It is. When I was at the Pentagon, and we did unfortunately lose service members, we were very clear about where they were killed in action and the reason. And this idea that you're going to recategorize their deaths so it fits your political narrative that this war did not take a toll on 18 lives and over 600 wounded is gross. And it is, I think, deeply offensive to the families. I mean, people that I've spoken to at the Pentagon, this is not something that they have ever seen ever happen, a recategorization of how you would determine someone killed in action. And so, for the families of these 4, men and women who were just lost, it's devastating because when we have, the conversation of why they were lost because of this war. They were lost because Iran launched Iranian drones and ballistic missiles at installations where our service members are. And that is the reason.
It's the whole gimmick of saying, oh, okay, we've reached the threshold at which we don't have to notify Congress. So let's just pretend like we're going to start a new conflict. That, I think, seems to insult the intelligence of the American people who know exactly what's going on.
We've seen the Pentagon multiple times actually go through and set up after we've gone through several different kinds of border conflicts, after certain kinds of observations and then strikes, retaliations, recategorize both casualties on the injury side and then those who have died. We've seen this before, again, all the way dating back to the Korean and the Vietnam Wars, in which we've seen the Department of Defense at the time.
I've never seen Department of Defense recategorize injuries or deaths from an operation. I've never seen that. And I was at the Pentagon.
They've done so multiple times. In the Obama administration, they recategorized the Syrian strikes multiple times.
That strikes, like deaths from a strike versus an entire operation is very different. This was an operation. This is a war. How do you explain how these 4 people died?
I'd like you to go back to asking very clearly, why didn't you know? If you're Miss Pentagon, why don't you know the history of actually recategorizing strikes? You were not specific, but hold on. How did these 4 people die? Again, they were struck by Iranian forces.
From the war?
From, yes, the retaliation from the Iranians.
Okay, so it's from the war. Great.
Yeah, I mean,
that seems simple enough.
I don't even know why you would argue otherwise. It's the same conflict. It is definitely the same conflict. And I don't know. I mean, they initially tried to say this was a software glitch, and then they created a whole different place to put these names. Why?
I mean, look, what matters is that President Trump has honored these families, and I'm not shocked to hear that there's issues with government websites. Whether or not it was a purposeful obfuscation, I think, remains to be seen.
Well,
but
I think at this point we know that
they changed the classification.
What I would
we
say,
know that this is not. I mean, the names came down. They claimed it was an accident, that's some kind of glitch. But then they did not restore them to where they should be. They put them in a different place.
Right. So I'd like to
that's
see.
Not a tech issue.
I'd like to see that.
Choice.
I'd like to see that restored. I think we need to have transparency around what's going on. I think one situation that, frankly, where we saw the government was certainly obfuscating, didn't have any transparency, was Anthony Fauci, who we're getting his diaries today, where he was purposely obfuscating about
Anthony Fauci.
That's actually something where we know he was purposely obfuscating.
Lydia, we're sitting here talking about Americans who were killed in theater, okay, as a result of a war. We are not going to pivot to Anthony Fauci's diaries. That's a different conversation.
You're saying that this is a purposeful obfuscation. We don't know that it was a purposeful obfuscation.
That we learned this weekend,
it was.
Isaiah, the other thing we learned this weekend is that the president has been warned by his own Defense Department, by his own vice president, that we are running low on munitions stockpiles. I'm going to play, this is Mike Walls, the ambassador to the United Nations, who was asked about this. And just listen carefully to how he explains whether this is true or not.
Is America backing away from a larger military attack because its military stockpile has been depleted?
Well, look, we have to take a step back here in that a lot of stockpiles were depleted, not only from what we gave Ukraine over the last however many years, 4 or 5 years, and the administration inherited, the Secretary Hegseth inherited a depleted situation.
But you acknowledge
I want to be clear.
No, I want to acknowledge they're depleted at this moment?
I want to be crystal clear. The U.S. military, and I've verified this every which way, has everything that it needs to conduct this campaign as effectively as it needs to be.
A tough job he's got there, because he seems to want to blame the previous administration for depletions and then claim that there are none.
I mean, it's just the standard playbook for them. It's just Biden derangement syndrome. It's really all they have at this point, because ultimately we understand that what was given to Ukraine was primarily for ground warfare. When it comes to this situation, I mean, he just said a couple weeks ago that the military had everything they needed to continue and to carry out these strikes. That's what he said. So it's amazing how when this comes down to where we are today, they change their tune. It's not really shocking because this is what they do.
So you can't have it both ways. Are we depleted or aren't we depleted? I want your opinion on that.
The point is
no,
that
answer the question. Answer it. Do you think we're depleted or not?
A couple weeks ago that we had everything we needed to carry out these strikes.
Can you answer the question?
So did he lie? Did he lie?
I'm asking you the question.
Did he lie? What do you think?
It matters. I don't believe that the United States.
The reporting is that the president was warned by the Defense Department and by his own vice president that if they continued with a larger war campaign, which he has the option to do, that would dangerously deplete our munitions. So, and I've seen, actually, rather than a lot of people saying this is not true, I've seen a lot of conservatives saying, who leaked this? Which seems to imply that they believe it is true.
I do not believe that the United States is in a position right now where we're not able to continue interceptions. There's two kinds of core munitions. But if we're going to look at this right here, when you're looking at interception or positive action.
That's just not the way you're characterizing it is not entirely accurate. I think there has been, I think the United States military, to your point, will do everything necessary to conduct an operation. But what you are not including here is that they will pull stocks from other combatant commands because our stockpiles are so depleted.
Why are our stockpiles depleted to this level? Do you think
our
that
stockpiles are depleted
operation
to this level?
Like this
you think
was
this
enough
is
to
small?
Deplete you think this is enough to deplete the entire U.S. stockpile?
No. You just said interceptors. How long do those take to make?
That's an excellent question. How long do those take to make?
They take 2 years.
Yes, they do.
And do you know how many we've gone through in this war?
By all means. Do you have that data
go ahead.
point?
You tell me.
I'm asking you to give me the data point.
What we have done is we have depleted very, very expensive munitions to shoot down very inexpensive drones, like $30,000 to $40,000 drones.
And to Walt's point,
and
then,
so,
why did we not have a larger
so I
supply
think,
of
Mike,
interceptor missiles? If this isn't enough to take on Iran, then what about Russia
We're not
or
giving
China?
the type of interceptor missiles that we use on the battlefield to Ukraine.
So you're saying,
those are different.
I mean, it sounds
So
like
then,
at this
do we
point,
have a ready stockpile
Tony,
to take on a
Tony,
larger
it sounds
group?
like at this point, Tony, you're acknowledging that there is a depletion happening.
I'm saying that either so. If there's a conditional, no, it matters here because I don't know the numbers, you don't know the numbers.
Well, I mean, the reporting at the beginning of the war was that we had probably around 1,200 of them. And this has been one of the big issues with this type of war is that we've had to intercept a lot because Iran has had the ability to launch a lot of, cheap missiles. These interceptors cost, what, $4 million each to create. So it is conceivable that we would be, maybe we're not at zero, but we don't need to get to zero. I don't think they would let us get to zero, but we don't need to be at zero for it to be a problem. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I don't think that necessarily we're going to be getting to that point. That's one of the reasons why the National Defense Authorization Act continues rebuilding stockpiling. I come from Indiana. There's a lot of military industry that creates manufacturing opportunities. That does matter over a year-to-year basis, not just in this administration.
I totally agree
because a lot
with
of those things take a long time to restore.
And by the way, you might not admit this, but we did a lot of investing in the defense industrial base during the Biden administration. It just turns out these things take a lot of time. And when you have something like Iran launching flying lawnmowers at you that cost $15,000 and you're shooting it down with a $4 million missile, that is a problem that our defense industrial base cannot meet right now.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Just 99 days until the midterms.
So, as always, I'll leave a link to the full discussion in the description if you'd like to watch it yourself. But I have to ask, why does this keep happening? Instead of addressing the central issue, Lydia Moynihan spends her time defending something that is difficult to justify. Rather than responding to the concerns being raised, she pivots to Anthony
Fauci, even though he has nothing to do with the topic at hand. We've seen this pattern before. When Donald Trump has been pressed on difficult questions, he has often redirected attention to the Biden administration, and Lydia follows the same approach here instead of sticking with the actual discussion. The earlier exchange involving Sabrina Singh and another pro-MAGA commentator followed a similar pattern. Despite speaking confidently, he struggled to demonstrate a solid understanding of the subject being debated. It's encouraging to see panelists challenge claims they believe are unsupported and keep the conversation focused on the facts instead of allowing repeated distractions. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to leave a like and help share the video so it reaches more people. We're now fewer than 9,000 subscribers away from reaching the 100,000 milestone, and every bit of support makes a difference. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.